Hello YouTube, and cheers. Unfortunately it's already got rather late today, so I'm going to kind of chicken out of doing a proper video again, for which I can apologise. What I wanted to do instead is do something that has I've seen a fair few of you doing, which looks kind of like a bit of fun, which is the Desert Island Discs thing. Though I'm kind of wondering if it's sort of cheating to take part in a thread like that without having been tagged. Who knows? Maybe I'll have to compensate by not tagging anyone at the end. But yeah, I just think tags like this are a bit of fun, and I don't know, maybe illuminates something about a person as well. If nothing else, just their tastes. But hopefully a little more than that as well. So the point of this thing is, as I'm sure you all know, you're stuck on a desert island and you get to have with you one book, one film, or as you Americans might say, a movie, 3 songs, 1 YouTube video, and 1 personal item. So, let's get started. The book was probably the easiest one for me to choose because I have a very definite favourite there. As I'm quite an avid reader. I would say I prefer reading to watching TV or films or anything like that. Not that there's not a place for films in my life or anything like that, but I love to read. I always have done. I remember my first English lesson in secondary school or high school or whatever you want to call it. We had to go around the class and say how many books we thought we read in a year. And I reckon at that time I was probably reading, at worst, a book every 2 days. So, I did my little bit of division, 365 divided by 2, and sat there waiting for the turn to come round to me. And everyone else in the class was sort of saying, I don't know, 6, 7. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to sound really weird if I tell the truth. I know, I'll lie and say I only read 50 books a year. So I did that, and the class, I said that, and it kept going around the class, and still mine was, my lie, my massive underestimation was still far, far more than anyone else read. So I've always been a keen reader. So my number one choice would be a book called The Reader, by Bernhard Schlink. The original is in the original German it's called Der Vorleser. And it's a really good book. It's got kind of a bit of everything really, sort of war, drama, crime, romance, anything you want really in a book it's got, and it's very philosophical, which I like. It touches on kind of the nature of love and regret and memories and all this sort of thing. The film of it, by the way, it was made a couple of years ago. Is actually one of the surprisingly good film versions of a book, so I would also recommend people to check that out. Which leads nicely into what film I would take. This was somewhat harder to choose. My very favourite film of all time is a film called Before Sunset. But I wouldn't take that because it's part of a pair of films. It's actually the second of a pair of films. And I hate watching it without watching the first one first. And I think that would annoy me just a bit too much for me to want to take that. But then my next thought was, okay, what about the film A Bridge Too Far? That's a really great war film. Amazing, you should all check it out. But then I thought, well, actually, if I'm stuck on a desert island, I probably want something with a reasonably happy ending. I don't want to be stuck watching the same film that's just going to get me more and more depressed. So I decided that I would probably indulge my inner child and take Finding Nemo, because I think it's an absolute classic and really a film actually for all ages, which is fairly rare for a film to do, I think, actually. there aren't many films out there that could be watched very happily by a 4 or 5-year-old and by their 30, 40, 50-year-old parents and by their 70, 80-year-old grandparents. So yeah, I think that's a great film, so that would be my choice for that. Next, the 3 songs, and this was really the hardest of all. I'm a big music obsessive. I think I have something like 50 or 60 days worth of listening on my iTunes. It's just something insane and ridiculous like that. So I love a lot of music. So that was pretty hard for me. I started off thinking along the same sort of lines as with the films. Maybe I should go for something a bit cheery. Just if you're stuck on a desert island, you might want to avoid sad music. But then I had a thought about what I do normally when I'm unhappy. And I actually think I deal with sadness a lot better if I have sad music to listen to. It helps me think through my emotions and my problems. I don't know, it makes me feel a sort of sense that someone is out there and is empathetic. They understand what I'm going through. I didn't intend to make all 3 songs horribly depressing ones, but in the event, that's how the choice turned out. I actually had to end up not choosing a song by my very favourite band, which is Iron Maiden, just because these 3 particular songs that I did choose, I don't know, kind of mean too much to me for me not to choose them. So my first choice is the song Islands by King Crimson from their album Islands. It's a fairly sort of sad song, really. It's got beautiful poetic lyrics and beautiful music. It's just a really fantastic song. It's also over 10 minutes long, so just from a sort of value for money standpoint, I think it does quite well as well. Next, I would take Peter Gabriel's "Here Comes the Flood," and there's 2 or 3 versions of that song. I'd take the version with Robert Fripp on Robert Fripp's album Exposure. And if I were sneaky, I could probably sneak in the 2 water music tracks on either side of that, because they're meant to be intro and conclusion, and they're only 2 or 3 minutes between them. But yes, that's a truly stunning song. Makes me cry every time I listen to it, which I know makes me a complete girl, but there you go. And the final track I would take is by a band called Van de Graaff Generator, and it's a track called Plague of Lighthouse Keepers, which has to be one of the ultimate songs for value for money. It's something like 25 minutes long, and not a single second of that is boring or filler or anything like that. It's a fantastic piece of music, very dark, very depressing, but very meaningful, and I love that in a song. And I think that I could spend my lifetime on the desert island, studying it and the musicianship and the lyrics, and every listen I would come up with something new, no matter how many times I ended up having to listen to it. It's just one of those songs that each time you hear it, you uncover a new layer of meaning, because it's so poetic and just so brilliant. So that's that. The YouTube video, up until very, very recently, I probably would have responded by saying pick one at random from Richard Coughlin, because his videos are always great. I actually haven't seen a video of his that I've disliked. He always manages to elicit some sort of response from me, be it laughter or anger or sadness or something. They always move me in some way. I think they're brilliant. But then, was it yesterday or the day before, Phil Helenas, and I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that, made a video called 65 Million Years with a Creationist, which is just brilliant. I've watched it 2 or 3 times now, just in the last day or two. It's a great video, and everyone should check it out. I'll put a link to it in the crotch bar. As for the personal item, I'm running out of time. I'm afraid I'm really going to have to cheat on this and say I'd take my girlfriend, because absolutely nothing else in the entire world makes sense to me to take. If I couldn't have her, then no other personal item would do. So, yeah, I know it's kind of cheating to take a person, but I don't think I could justify anything else. So, there you go. Maybe instead of tagging someone, I'll just say, anyone that sees this, you have to make one now if you haven't already. So, good night, YouTube.